to call the May 11th Zoning Board of Appeals meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag. Thank you. All right, as I believe everybody knows, this is a continuation for the aloof application. How the evening will proceed, the applicant will present their plans to the audience, to the board, and at a time, we will ask the audience for their input, and if you do want to speak, we ask that you come up to the podium, state your name and address for the court reporter. You can't just yell out in the crowd. We have to keep it orderly so the court reporter can document what's being said. So we ask for your help there. Everybody will be sworn in. Again, it's a public hearing. And so with that, I'll reread the application. It's application ZBA number 17-31, application of API Industries Incorporated, DBA Aloof Plastics, requesting the Zoning Board of Appeals review and determination of conformance with the Town of Orangetown zoning codes, Orangetown Code, Chapter 43, Section 4.1, performance standards, including but not limited to Section 4.164 and Section 4.182, review of the cumulative operations and equipment being employed at the site, and additional air quality controls in accordance with New York State Department of Environmental Conservation's requirements. The site is located at 2 Glenshaw Street, Orangeburg, Town of Orangetown, Rockland County, New York, and as shown on the Orangetown tax map, as Section 70.18, Block 2, Lot 15 in the LIO zoning district. And with that, we have quite a few correspondence. Yeah. This would hand it today. You just got to turn your mic on.
I have an extra set. Here. This is all.
Make sure I have all of them. They're all stapled? Okay.
They're all stapled together.
Yeah, well, follow along, and if I miss anything, let me know. Okay. First is a letter dated May 3, 2017, one page, signed by Joseph J. Rampey, Commissioner, Department of Environmental Management Engineering of the Town of Orangetown, and it reads in substance, upon my review of Aloof Plastics above reference application and submissions thereto, Aloof Plastics has provided at this time sufficient evidence and information in the form of a report from a licensed New York State professional engineer asserting compliance with performance standards. Said report is to be annexed to this application. In consideration of the information that was provided, I conclude that the applicant's proposal conforms with the performance standards set forth in Article 4.1, Chapter 43 of the Code of the Town of Orangetown. This does not preclude the obligation of the applicant to certify that the installation of the proposed systems and improvements proposed by this application be certified for conformance with the town's performance standards upon installation and testing of the system. The next is a prior letter of April 27, 2017, also by Joseph J. Rampey, Commissioner of the Orangetown Department of Environmental Management and Engineering, Town of Orangetown. I've read these both, and I'm confident that May 3 supersedes the April 27 letter from Mr. Moran. It's part of the record. If anyone would like a copy, if they haven't seen it already, you may have a copy of the April 27, 2017 letter from Mr. Moran, Commissioner of the Orangetown Department of Environmental Management and Engineering. But again, unless you guys disagree with me, I believe it's been superseded by his May 3rd letter.
Right.
Next is from the Town of Orangetown Bureau of Fire Prevention, dated May 1, 2017. It's one page, signed by Michael B. Bettman, Chief Fire Inspector, Town of Orangetown. And it reads in substance, performance standards. 1, will the flexible duct supplying the makeup air interfere with fire sprinkler coverage? 2, it is general practice that makeup air systems shut down upon fire or water flow alarms. Has this been considered by an engineer? 3, provide flame spread rating for flexible duct. 4, this building consists of steel roof trusses. Are they capable of supporting the rooftop makeup air units? 5, page 3 of the resume of operations fire prevention supplement does not list the inks, waste oil, new oil, acetylene, etc. on site. Next is from the Rockland County Highway Department, dated March 27, 2017, one page, signed by Joseph Arena, Senior Engineering Technician, and it reads, in substance, a Rockland County Highway Department work permit will not be required for the proposed construction. We remand this matter for local determination. Next is from the Rockland County Sewer District Number 1, dated May 8, 2017. It's 2 pages, signed by Joseph LaFiandra, Engineer 2, and it reads in substance. Our comments are as follows. 1, Rockland County Sewer District Number 1 does not object to the plan. This facility no longer discharges into the district's collection system. 2, the district owns and maintains 2 interceptor sewers in an easement on the above property. No permanent structures may be built within our easements. If any foundation work or other types of major excavation work is to be done within close proximity to the easement boundary, we must be notified 48 hours in advance. Shoring or other types of precautions may be needed to protect the sewer main. The property owner must also pay these expenses. 3, to prevent any damage from occurring to the existing main, the district must be notified when the land within the easement is to be modified. This includes, but is not limited to, regrading, raising, or lowering of manhole frames, or working in close proximity to sewers and manholes within the easement. Our office must approve any construction to be done within our easements. 4, a contractor must obtain required insurance and sign a waiver to defend, indemnify, save, and hold harmless both the County of Rockland and the Rockland County Sewer District Number 1 from any claims arising from work performed within our easements. That ends that. Next is a single-page letter from Town Board Councilman Tom Divney. It's undated, but it's stamped, received by the Town of Orangetown Land Use Board's May 11, 2017, to the Orangetown Zoning Board of Appeals. First off, let me thank you for your service. I appreciate all the hard work that you do for the Town of Orangetown. I'm writing you with regard to the Aloof Performance Standards hearing taking place on May 11, 2017. As I have wrote this board in the past, Aloof's failure to treat its neighbors with respect and common decency and their lack of concern for the health and safety of town residents has garnered much interest in the past year and thorough, sometimes heated debate regarding its business practices in Orangetown. Again, while recognizing that the zoning board has the ultimate approval over performance standards, I feel compelled to weigh in on this application. To state the obvious, Aloof has not acted as a good neighbor and has ignored resident concerns regarding emissions from this facility. For almost a year and one half, Aloof has received hundreds of complaints regarding odors coming from its plant, and said complaints have been disregarded. I can go on and on about Aloof's woeful track record in this community. However, this does not solve the underlying problem, which is the noxious stench in the Blauville community surrounding the Aloof factory. The residents living in this area deserve action and a resolution to this problem. For this reason, I must support Aloof's application for the approval of its performance standards. To be clear, the approval of said performance standards does not mean Aloof is presently in compliance with the town code or the DEC consent order. Aloof is not in compliance, and that is why we are here tonight. With that being said, it is clear that the most important thing for this community is that the odor problem be resolved. Without the approval of the performance standards, a building permit cannot be issued to make the changes and upgrades required under the DEC consent order, and the odor problem cannot be remedied. For this reason, the performance standards must be conditionally approved and independent outside engineers employed at the expense of the applicant to certify compliance with applicable town code and the DEC consent order when the repairs are complete. Aloof has advised the town that the time frame for all repairs is 6 to 8 weeks. I remain optimistic that at the end of this construction period, the residents of Blauville can go back to enjoying their yards and opening their windows without the intrusion of these offensive odors. If not, Aloof will have to answer to the ZBA Board, Town Board, DEC, and residents of Orangetown, and any such approval to operate under the permits issued should be immediately revoked. To finish off, let me thank you for your time and consideration. Thank you for your service to the Town of Orangetown. Next is from the Rockland County Department of Planning. It's dated June 1, 2010 and May 1, 2017. And it reads, please be advised that we are returning the enclosed GML review as it is not in our jurisdiction. Next is an email from Christoph Witek. That's, do you need a spelling? You have this, Anne-Marie? And it reads, Dear Debbie, it's addressed to Debbie Arbolino, Clerk Secretary to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Aloof is scheduled to appear before the ZBI on May 3rd and again on June 7th. I am a concerned citizen of Orangetown negatively impacted by continuing emissions of noxious odors from Aloof. 1, I request that the NYSDEC stack testing and inside factory aldehyde testing commence as soon as possible and the results be shared with the community. 2, I request the town conducts comprehensive 3-month ambient air testing in the factory vicinity to scientifically identify all chemicals and VOCs that I'm breathing in with Aloof's noxious odors. 3, I request the town prosecutes Aloof to the fullest extent of the law for all past and present town code violations. It is my hope and expectation that Aloof is making all the NYSDEC mandated changes to their production process, including installing required filtration, limiting, and regulating the recycling materials. The town board and its land use boards must not agree to designate Aloof Plastics as in compliance with town code performance standards until all the above requests have been satisfied and odor emissions completely ceased. Next is from Kathy Lamstein. I don't know if I said that the email from Mr. Wytek is May 3rd, 2017. Next is an email from Kathy Lamstein dated May 3, 2017, and it's addressed again to Ms. Arbolino. It reads, I'm sorry? I'll get to that. It's addressed to Ms. Arbolino, Clerk Secretary of the ZBA, and I'm pretty sure, because I may have seen this before, I believe it's essentially the same, except for the last paragraph. It's the same as Mr. Wytek's May 3rd, 2017 email that I just recited into the record, except for the final paragraph or a couple sentences, which reads, as a psychologist, I am well aware that past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. Aloof has shown time and again that they will not comply with regulations unless forced to. They have not even admitted that the odors or perfumed burning plastic are coming from their facility. Given this consistent history, we cannot take their word for it that they will follow through with all the repairs if we pre-approve them first. And it's signed by Catherine Lamstein Reese. Next is an email from Mavis A. Ronang, I'm not pronouncing that, Esquire, May 3rd, 2017, addressed to Ms. Arbolino. It reads similarly, almost verbatim as Mr. Wytek's May 3rd email. And, except for what?
Not the second paragraph.
Not the second paragraph.
I grew up in Blauville.
Yes, I grew up in Blauville. My parents bought our family home in 1967, and I now live in Pearl River. I have found the use of the trail to be unusable at times due to the noxious odors being emitted from the Aloof manufacturing location. I'm also deeply disturbed that these noxious odors are impacting the local schools and preventing the neighbors in the vicinity of Aloof from enjoying the use of the property that they pay substantial taxes on. I do understand the importance of business in our town. However, just like residential property owners, they need to be held not only to the standards set by our town code, but also to the standards of civility. Emitting noxious odors to the point that taxpayers are unable to enjoy both private and public property exceeds those standards and should not be tolerated. Therefore, and then I believe it mirrors the same emails that we've previously recited into the record. Next is from Nicole Schuster, dated May 3rd, 2017, addressed to Ms. Arbolino, and it mirrors the email, this, I guess we'll call the meat and bones of the emails that we've recited into the record previously.
Except for the first paragraph.
Except for the first paragraph, thank you. We need an educator to educate. Hi, Debbie, my name is Nicole Schuster. I'm a homeowner resident of Orangeburg. I'm sure you and the others I've CC'd here have seen a ton of these emails. I try to keep my nose out of things as I'm a working mom with 2 babies. I just don't have the energy or time to spend on anything more. However, I've grown to love this town, the people in it, the boards that keep all moving along. I know you guys listen, so I'm taking the time to send this. And then it mirrors the points that have been made in the other emails, except for the final paragraph, I think. Thank you all for your time and efforts. I know it's not comparable, but my husband served on the board for his condo building back in the day for many years. It was a nightmare. People tend to forget that we all have lives outside of serving our community. That sounds selfish, but it's true. So thank you again for your time and efforts. You are all doing a great job. And an email from Chris Day, dated May 3, 2017. And it reads, this is a unique email, so I'll read it in full. Debbie, if you would please forward my below comments to the members of the ZBA and for the public record, I would greatly appreciate it. To the Zoning Board of Appeals, I'm writing in reference to the application by Aloof that they be deemed in full compliance with the town code and performance standards. While I understand that tonight's meeting will not, per the notice posted, get to a resolution of that question, will instead include solely the procedural step of declaring the ZBA lead agency under SECRA, I feel it is important that the board not deem Aloof to be in full compliance at this or the subsequent scheduled appearance in June, unless multi-month ambient air testing has been completed by the town or another appropriate agency, and Aloof both passes that test and they make sufficient modifications to their process in order to permanently stop all odor emissions such that they will be in compliance with NYSDEC and our nuisance laws under town code. I'd also like to add for the record that it is clear, apparent, and disgusting that Aloof is abusing our system, wasting your time, and disrespecting the board by making this application solely to cause an automatic stay in prosecution for the current court action they face for their violations of town code. This fact alone should rightfully anger the ZBA and the people of Orangetown, as it is wasting your time when not a single fact has changed in a selfish attempt by the company to wait out any legal penalties by throwing paperwork at you. I hope you keep this fact in mind when they appear and when reviewing their application, and deny it as quickly and with as little of your time wasted as possible. There's a very thick packet from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. Debbie, is this, am I, can I reference this? It's quite. We have correspondence, reports, documents, records from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation entitled Permit under the Environmental Conservation Law. And perhaps the applicant can summarize these documents, not now, but, or maybe, maybe Debbie, you can? All right, why don't we, let's do, okay, why don't you summarize what this is, if you don't mind?
I don't see the whole thing, but you're saying the air permit? That's our air permit.
It's part of the record, the public has access to it, so we'll disagree with you if you don't summarize it accurately.
So this is the existing air permit.
Wait, Mr. Lawson, could you make sure your mic is on?
I'm sorry.
Is it, okay, and point it, speak right into the microphone.
Okay, so this is the existing air permit under which we operate with the New York State DEC. There's no expiration date on this air permit, and the permit ID is 3-3924-00190/00006, and its effective date was January 29th, 2013. Okay, and that's identifying all of the point sources of the air issues in the building.
Well, there's some attachments there, maybe you
Yeah,
can
that's
just
what I'm looking
summarize
at,
what
the
these
back end.
attachments are.
I'm looking for that.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is Corpola Engineering's certification of the, they looked at our plan for the air, building ventilation plan, okay? And this is where he's certifying the building ventilation plan to Joe Moran, who had asked for it.
Okay,
Okay.
and that's Loose
And-
Engineer.
Right.
What's his name again? I'm sorry.
Ravi Corpola Engineering.
Okay.
I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but Korlipara Engineering. And we sent this to a number of people, yourself included, right? And then the last page is the summary of all the actions that we've taken pursuant to compliance with the DEC. And there are 4 pages of that scheduling with 21 unique items on it, okay? And it shows you the status of where we are with each step with the DEC.
Okay. Mr. Rogenkamp, did he leave anything out? Does that summarize it?
Yeah, that is an accurate summary of what this document is.
Thank you, Mr. Rogenkamp. Any other correspondence, reports, submissions, Debbie, that are part of the record that you have decided, other than the application? Other than the application submissions itself?
This is from today.
Wait, I'm being handed okay, this is a letter/report, I don't know which, from Korlipara Engineering Consulting Services dated May 3, 2017. It's 2 pages, signed by Ravi K. Korlipara, PhD, PE, stamped, sealed, New York State licensed professional engineer.
There's a letter right before that, it's from
Oh. Okay, so this May 3, 2017 letter from Mr. Korlipara is an attachment to an email from Lara M. Quintillani Olivieri, an email from Lara Olivieri dated March 8, 2017, and it's addressed to George Swikert, and Ms. Olivieri is with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. It's addressed to Ed Rogenkamp, who I know is the attorney for Aloof, And it's also addressed to George Schweikert of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, and it reads, the department has received the Aloof Plastics Building Ventilation Proposal dated February 15, 2017. The department has reviewed and is approving this proposal with the additional requirement that carbon filters be added to the exhaust from the room where recycled plastics are processed. And then there's the attachment to the email, Mr. Colapara's May 3rd, 2017 letter. And attached to that is Aloof Plastics. It's a four-page document entitled Summary of Implementation of Additional Air Emissions Controls and Remedial Actions at Aloof Plastics. And again, it's 4 pages. It's, I don't know if it's dated, but it's stamped, received by the Town of Orangetown Land Use Board's May 3, 2017. And it consists of 21 items, running from dates October 21, 2016 through March 3rd of 2017. Anything else?
That's it. That's all I have. Great. I got some more.
Yeah, we described that.
So this,
Okay, so-
this is a
so,
letter that I sent this morning to John Giordano, in response to the fire department's questions on the flammability and sprinklers and et cetera.
Okay, I'll read into the record. Yes. So I believe what you're submitting is a response to Chief Fire Inspector Michael B. Bettman's May 1, 2017 report to the ZBA.
That's correct.
It's a 2-page letter dated May 11, 2017. It's on Aloof Plastics letterhead, signed by Anthony Lawson, PMP, Corporate Engineering Manager for Aloof Plastics, Inc. And it reads, in response to Michael Bettman's memo, Chief Fire Inspector to the Orangetown Zoning Board of Appeals dated May 1, 2017, and distributed to Aloof at last week's ZBA meeting, his questions/comments and Aloof's responses follows. 1, will the flexible duct supplying the makeup air systems interfere with the fire sprinkler coverage? A, metal ductwork will extend from the roof-mounted units and elbow to a location below the sprinklers where the fabric ducting begins. The fabric ducting will only run horizontally below the sprinklers. Sprinkler coverage will be provided. 2, it is general practice that makeup air systems shut down upon fire or water flow alarms. Has this been considered by the engineer? A, yes, the 10 fans/blowers involved with the makeup air will shut down on fire alarm. We plan on a central control for all fans due to the NYSDEC requirement to leave the system on for a period of time after weekly plant shutdown. 3, provide flame spread rating for flexible duct. A, see attached documents. Little Roman numeral I, ICC-ESPMG listing, PMG-1048, AirMax flexible ducts, 5 sheets. Little Roman numeral 2, AirMax fire retardant ducting spec sheet. 4, this building consists of steel roof trusses. Are they capable of supporting rooftop makeup air units? A, yes. PE to confirm design before install. 5, page 3 of resume of operations, fire prevention supplement does not list the inks, waste oil, new oil, acetylene, et cetera on site. A, quantities vary due to usage and restocking, but generally on-hand volumes are about, little Roman numeral 1, propane, 25 40-pound tanks in use on lift trucks, 60 40-pound tanks stored in metal cages outside building, 4 25-pound tanks for other uses, little Roman numeral 2. Acetylene, 4 100-pound cylinders and 4 50-pound cylinders, little Roman numeral 3. Oxygen, 4 100-pound cylinders and 4 50-pound cylinders, little Roman numeral 4. Offset printer inks are water-based, little Roman numeral 5. Ink sludge, 222 kilograms month at 220 kilograms per month average, little Roman numeral 6. Inkjet inks, 8 boxes, 8 gallons, little Roman numeral 7. Inkjet cleaning solvent, 24 8-milliliter bottles, and little Roman numeral 8. Lubrication oil, 12 drums on hand. Waste oil recycled, 331 kilograms per month. And there's an attachment on letterhead of AirMax International, Inc. It's 1 page with an attachment to that. or which I guess is an attachment to.
Yeah, these are the two
Mr.
attachments.
It's an attachment to your
Right.
correspondence. It's the ICC-ESPMG listing that's referenced in Mr. Lawson's letter. Correct? Those
Correct.
are all the attachments? There's several page attachment. And I think that's it.
Great, thank you, Mr. Michaels. Mr. Brenner?
Well, I think we appeared here, and I think we've given all the information that's related, showing that the company's been doing many, many months of work, getting approvals from the DEC, getting approvals from your engineer, and we really want to proceed and get the units in so that we can take care of any potential problems which might occur this summer. If you want to go through each item specifically, we can, but we think it's been presented pretty well as to what is going to be done. We have our engineer here, we have our environmental attorney here, we have the plant manager here, and I think the best way to be, if you have any kind of questions, we'll be glad to answer them.
No, not at this point. If you want to walk through your plan, that'd be great.
I can do that. Yep. I suggest you just look at the drawing of the building, and I'll talk from that. You all can read the words and the explanation of it. All right.
Building ventilation proposal? Is that what
Yeah. So in the back of it, you'll see a, yeah, 1 second, I'm sorry. Let me get positioned here. So this is the drawing I'll reference, okay? First, I'll give you a general layout of the building. I'll give you a general understanding of the building and what occurs in each area, okay? If we go from the left of the building to the right, you'll see that we have separate rooms in the building. The first room is labeled our retail department. This department will have 2 air handling units on the roof. They're shown as the little T-square, T-type figure, and then it'll have 2 rows of ducting that is shown as, I don't know, do you have a colored copy? Then
Yes.
it's blue, right? Also, on that drawing is the numbers, okay, and those numbers relate to process lines. Okay, so you can see where we're sending air to the areas that the operators are standing, okay? Each unit is, each one of these yellow blocks that you see on this drawing, all 10 of them, are rated at 30,000 CFM each. And I don't have the exact numbers in front of me right now, but basically, we change the air right now somewhere around 1 time a minute or an hour. And what we're going to do is we're going to up that to about 8 maximum and 4 in some places, okay? That means that we're going to have basically 1/8 the amount of whatever's leaving our building is going to be diluted. Each one of these yellow units are a filtered system, so it's going to bring in filtered outside air into the building, okay? So retail is one department, okay, and we sized it based on the number of units based upon the area and what we actually do there. I'll say the most troubling area is what we call our reprocessing department, and this is where all the negative press comes from. And this is why the DEC took a very close look at this. So we have the same 2 units bringing in 30,000 CFM. You see that this is one of the smaller rooms that we have. What the DEC suggested and what we agree to is what you see in pink. These are, basically there's a filtered unit that hangs from the ceiling in the room that collects that 30,000 CFM of air, okay, and brings it up through a filtered box that hangs from the ceiling, and then it elbows it up into a carbon bed up on the roof, okay? Yeah, both, exactly. Yeah, there's a filter pickup, and then there's carbon filtration. Right now, there are fans on the back walls that eliminate the air, the heat from the building, and they will no longer be used. They'll be closed off, okay? The next room is our warehouse area, okay? So there's no processing there, there's no exchange of air in that area. The next one is our high-density department, okay? And again, we will add 2 units. You notice it's a much smaller room, but we have a lot of process equipment there. So those 2 will be, again, 60,000 CFM going into the room and then being exhausted, okay? And then our low density, we divided into 2 separate rooms, 2 wings, the east and the west wing. And each wing will have 2, so in the whole low density department, there'll be 4 units, okay? And again, same thing, each one brings in 30,000 CFM, and then they exhaust the air, 8 times diluted or 4 times, I forget what the numbers are, for each room, okay? But anywhere from 4 to 8 times what we're doing now, okay?
And is that filtered?
It's filtered going in, yes.
And it's not filtered going
Not filtered going out. Because of the dilution, we don't need the
I'm
filtration.
sorry, because what?
Because of the dilution, we don't need the filtration at that point. Any more questions? I can give you whatever detail you want.
Got a question for you.
Sure.
You have 4 rooms, process rooms, with intake air. You've explained how the intake air works.
Right.
I must have missed something. All of the exhaust is taking place above the reprocessing department?
No. So each room has a series of fans in them, okay? So-
Intake.
No, exhaust. So intake is the yellow that you see on
Okay.
your drawing, okay? That's the intake air that's coming into the building. That's all filtered and cleaned air bringing into the building,
Okay.
okay? And then we have existing exhaust fans. And so there's less processing in these rooms that we're not putting the filtration that the DEC required, okay, on the 3 rooms that you see.
You're not, you said?
No exhaust filtration on those.
So the black dots, exhaust stack?
That's the air permit. Think of that as the air permit.
All right.
That's the location of
How
our,
much exhaust air is coming out of each of the, let's take the low
so
density.
we're putting, so low density, you have 60,000 CFM on one half.
I didn't
and-
ask you, what are you taking out? You taking out the same amount? You said
Yeah,
you're
the same
taking
amount.
air
You
4
put it
times.
in, it goes out.
I understand.
So
you're
whatever we
adding
put
the
in-
fans now.
Correct.
So you had exhaust before.
We had exhaust fans
You had
going
exhaust
before,
and no air intake.
so no air intake. It came from doors, cracks,
Okay,
windows.
at the point where you said
whatever.
that when it goes in, it goes out, I get that,
Right.
I understand that.
Right.
But it wasn't there before, so that's why.
It was
I'm
not there
asking you
before,
questions.
right. This is what we're adding.
Okay. so
These fans on the roof are what we're adding.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
And no filtration was recommended, only for the
No,
reprocessing department?
for the reprocessing
That's
department,
all
right.
that was recommended.
Yeah, that was per the DEC.
Can you describe what you do in the high and low density areas?
The processes?
Yes.
Okay, so these rooms are where we have a number of blown film lines, okay? Blown film lines is where we convert plastic pellets into film, okay? The plastic film ultimately ends up being mostly trash bags, but they're some flat sheet for construction film, things like that.
And the level of odor from that process?
The level of odor is much, much less than the reprocessing room.
What is that? So you still have an odor.
In our building, we have an odor, yes.
So I don't understand why we're not filtering the air coming out of the entire facility.
We are. We're diluting
You
it.
said you're diluting it in what way? You're
Because-
filtering it on the way in, but on the way out,
Yeah,
it's still
but
going
we're-
out with the smells that it's in the room.
Okay, so maybe I'm missing the point. So the fans that exist, okay, don't move enough air. So if you look at the report, some of them are less than 1 air change an hour that we're doing. So we're not moving much air through the building at all, okay? So now, when we add these filters, we're upping that by 8 times in most cases, okay? So when we move 8 times the amount of air, we're diluting it by a factor of 8. okay? So whatever air is in the building now will be diluted by a factor of 8
That's just
before it
because you're
leaves the
putting,
building.
that's just because you're putting more fresh air into the building.
Correct, correct.
So is that, so the point is though, so you're putting that, 30, 60,000 CFMs into as one big room. You don't know, but you're also pushing that air out, even though it's diluted, we don't know if the air that's going out, even if you dilute it by 10 times, still may not be a problem, still may be a problem.
I don't believe so.
You don't believe so, but we don't know.
Well, the stacks are filtered, right.
I'm sorry, the stacks what?
The stacks are filtered.
Which stacks?
So these black dots that
That
you
you
were
told me
asking
not to
about
pay
before?
attention to? That's why I was asking the question.
That was my question before, so
That-
it
But
is
those are
filtered.
separate from what we're asking for approval.
I know, but it's all together, right?
Bottom left.
So,
Okay, so the exhaust stacks, okay, the black dots, okay? That's part of our air permit, okay? So when you read through all the jargon of that air permit, there are numbers of different lines here that are equipped with what we call internal bubble cooling, okay? Internal bubble cooling takes the air from inside the bubble that we're forming, so it's contained within that plastic bubble, and we exchange that air. So by doing that, we're putting more cooling air into the bubble so we can run the lines at a higher rate, so we can produce more plastic, right, by cooling it faster, okay? So all of that exhaust, it's very concentrated, and we're sending a lot of it through the bubbles, okay? So we then collect all of that, and we put it through a filter system, okay, which consists of a cyclonic separator, particulate filters, and then a carbon filters before it exits the stacks. So we have 4 of them that are identical, okay, and they're labeled IBC on this drawing, okay? And then the exhaust out of the repro, again, is a little more severe, so we have 7 collection hoods within the room that are right over the processes, and they collect the fumes coming out of the processes, okay? And they send them through a cyclonic filter, a more serious particulate filter, and then another series of filters which are HEPA filters and such. And then we go through a 10,000-pound carbon bed before they actually go up the stack. And that's all part of the thing. Additionally, at the IBC rooms, okay, we collect the room air out of those. So we use the room air as the makeup air to balance the system. So if we don't have this line running, it takes the air from the room, right? So we always have a certain amount that is always going into those filters. And I think that's what these gentlemen were referring to.
So I'm gonna go back to my question about 10
Okay.
minutes ago. So the air coming out from each individual room is filtered differently, but filtered.
Not all of it, no.
Okay, some of the air coming out is filtered.
Yeah, the internal bubble cooling is filtered, that's all taken care of. But they're talking about the air that we're concerned about getting the heat out of the building, that we have fans in the building to get the heat out.
Okay.
And that seems to be a focus of a complaint, okay? So we're trying to address that by diluting the air that's coming out of those fans.
Okay, so
Right.
the air coming out of the fans is not filtered. It's
Is
the air
not
that's
filtered,
pushed through the
right.
stacks that's filtered.
Correct.
Okay,
The
and
air
what's,
coming out of the units are filtered. The air coming out of
The bubbles,
the bubbles.
The bubbles
are
Right.
filtered.
but not the air coming out of the fans?
not the general air in the room.
but the general air in the room may have smells in it, diluted or not.
That's your opinion. I'm,
That's not my opinion. I think there's a lot of people
No,
in the area that
well-
have opinions, and I don't know if you can say that it's limited to this once, this is our focal point because someone said so, when we are trying to figure out where is the issue.
well, we've had this reviewed by quite a few people, okay? And this is the plan that has been approved by the New York State DEC. And, you know, we would do whatever they asked us to do, and this is what they asked us to do. Okay, so the best minds, I believe, in the area have been looked at this from an air quality standpoint, and this is what they're agreeing with.
All of which has to be tested and then evaluated.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
nobody's
all the
going to
mines-
say,
All the mines have done this, but the actual reality is gonna be after the testing.
correct, when you build a bridge, you're not quite 100% sure. You're-
Absolutely, absolutely,
you know,
but the
until they
fact that a
put
lot
that
of good minds
monster
looked at
truck
it
on it,
doesn't
right.
guarantee that it's gonna be perfect.
I would say with a great certainty it will be.
The exhaust air, why is it horizontal, not
Yeah,
vertical?
like a lot.
The fans,
Yeah. To show horizontal exhaust.
that one is the pink ones that are on the roof of the reprocessing room, okay? And that's the ones that are going to contain the carbon filtration, okay? So
Is there any reason why a horizontal and not vertical?
matter of construction,
If I say vertical, that would be going straight up, and horizontal would be pushing out over the roof.
yeah, you gotta understand that this is not the air that's coming from the processes, okay? This is just the ambient air that's in the room, okay? And this is not heavily fumes or whatever. This is the stuff that escapes us, okay, in this room, in the reprocessing room, okay? And we've taken great pains to now improve capturing all of those fumes. We've done a lot of work to do that. So whatever is the residual, okay, the DEC says belt and suspenders, let's put carbon filtration on that room. So we said, fine, we'll put carbon filtration on that room. Whether it,
How often is the carbon filter changed?
okay, so in the other areas where we have a heavy fume on it, we change it within 2 weeks, they're changed out. That's the schedule for the carbon, okay? For the 4 IBCs, okay? We suspect that we don't know yet, but we suspect that the carbon on the reprocessing room will last a lot longer because it's not as heavy a concentration.
What's the anticipated amount of time to complete all this if you were to start on a given day?
It really is vendor dependent, but I told Tom Divany that, 8 weeks or so is probably a good time frame to consider. It's also weather dependent,
Yeah,
so.
sure.
Then what?
I'm sorry?
Let's say after that we build 6 weeks, then what? What's the plan?
Yeah, so we build it in 6 weeks, okay? And then I believe the town has got a 90-day program that they got set up to test for pollution in the area, okay? If we have something that's been assigned to us, then we'll definitely address it. But until then, that's hypothetical, and I really can't answer that at this point. But I'm sure everybody will be looking at it.
So,
Rightfully so.
yeah, if this gets approved tonight, in 6 weeks, you, again, weather permitting, you have this up and operational. If the directors, the professional engineers of the town, if they're not comfortable with the assessment, are you willing and, I guess, to allow them to hire outside consultants to ensure that what you have proposed here is meeting the requirements? I just want to make sure that you're in agreement that if we get to 6 weeks and the odor is still there, that it has to be readdressed.
My understanding is that it is this board's prerogative in the town code to hire an outside engineer to evaluate any plans that we're proposing, both at this stage before it's installed, or if you see fit, afterwards for compliance. And according to the town code, that's at the applicant's expense. Obviously, it's in the town code. We don't have any problem with that.
Great. Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that. Okay, thank you.
I had a couple of questions on this.
The schedule?
Yes.
Okay.
'Cause I noticed there's several things that you've completed, and then others that are either waiting, I saw a couple waiting for Orangetown approval.
Yes.
Number 7,
Yeah, that's what we're here tonight for,
so our approval?
yes. And Akabor, I'm sorry. That's next week.
Akabor? What does
Yeah.
Akabor have to?
Talk to John.
Oh. So, in other words, you can't order parts and equipment
No, we
until you
won't,
receive
we
this
won't take that
approval?
risk.
I'm sorry?
We won't take that risk, no.
And going back to the repro room, number 5? Repro, oh, sorry.
repro.
Repro room,
Right.
repro room. I use the Italian pronunciation. It says that if modifications may be needed, is that once, so a new permit might be needed? A LUF will apply for modification, so what is gonna determine that? Because
Right,
it
so
looks like it
that-
says complete, but then,
So we have submitted an application to modify the existing air permit to DEC,
okay,
partly to incorporate these proposed ventilation upgrades, which are also before you for approval.
okay,
Also to incorporate several work practices that they've asked us to incorporate in order to minimize any odors in the facility and therefore minimize any fugitive odors. And those are being added to the permit as conditions, so they're legally enforceable by DEC.
okay, so you actually have applied for that already?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, because I saw it was in the future, so I was just curious.
Yeah, the application is in, obviously DEC hasn't approved it yet. They have to put it out for public comment.
Okay, and could you explain what response you're awaiting from the DEC for number 6?
Number 6 for the stack testing. Actually, so this was submitted last week, and actually a couple of days after we submitted this, we got DEC approval for the stack testing protocol. So
Okay,
they've signed off on how the stack testing is going to be done. All that's left is to schedule it. And the third-party engineer that we've hired as a consultant to do the stack testing is coordinating with DEC, I believe, because DEC wants their engineers on site as well when it occurs. So obviously, the scheduling is going to be a little bit complex. We're confident that it's going to happen in June, but I can't tell you the exact date.
so this is stack testing, these are stacks that you already have?
That's correct. That's for the IBC stacks and the repro stack that are the black dots on the diagram.
Okay, so those can be tested before some of the other work is done, independently
Yeah,
of
they're
the other
independent.
work?
That stack testing can be done before all of the ventilation upgrades are installed.
Okay.
That's separate.
Then number 15, so the ventilation system you're talking about there is what you were just explained to us?
That's correct.
So that, by the summer, so in other words, that's within the 6 weeks?
Yeah, and that, just to be clear, that item number 15 was posting signs to keep the doors closed. So again, it closes another potential fugitive emission point where odors might come out through the door. Those are all up. Employees have been told not to keep the doors open. There's a concern that as things get hotter in the summer, you can't always confirm that employees are going to do exactly as they're told. So we'd like to have the ventilation upgrades in because that'll change over air. It'll also help with the heat in the facility. That'll help ensure that we can get people to do what they're supposed to do.
Okay, I have just 2 more. The permit, the air permit that you talk about in the application in 16, that's part of the one we spoke about before, or is that
Yes.
a separate one?
That's the same DEC permit.
Okay. And number 17, do you know that there's another supplier out there, or what happens if there isn't?
No, we've located the supplier for it, and right now we're getting it sorted out. So we'll be placing the order within a week or so to
Okay.
get those replaced.
So there definitely is
Yeah,
someone out there?
they're going forward.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Number 8, you talk about number 8. They're gonna run you run the exhaust fan for 4 hours after it's being shut down. Why wouldn't you run also the fresh air filtration to dilute the air as well?
That's what we're doing. The building ventilation that you see before us, we were asked to keep that running after we shut down on
Well, it
Friday
says
night.
exhaust, but you're also, your supplier that you filter.
Yeah. I'm sorry, it's the same thing, the ventilation and exhaust filtration.
Okay,
So
Got it.
keep them all running,
right.
okay?
the articulating spot vacuums you're talking about in the repro screen room?
I'm sorry, say that again?
You're installing an articulating spot vacuum for localized fume capture near the repro screen
Yeah,
chamber.
so are you familiar with welding hoods?
Yep.
Right, so this is basically what it is. So when they change the filters on the extruders, they're called screens.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't put them right where they're supposed to, under the big hood that's supposed to take up whatever fumes are coming off of them. So sometimes they plop them in the floor, and there may be some emissions for 10 minutes or so until they cool down. Okay, so we want to put a hood that they can actually place over the screen change.
Got it. It's like a little smoky kind of thing.
Yeah, just a little extra hood that they can put where they need it.
And that'll be part of a process you guys have in place as well?
Correct, correct.
The air from that would be sent through the repro exhaust stack. So it would go through the cyclonic filters, the physical filters, and the outdoor carbon bed, and then be sent up the stack.
All right.
Good, Mike?
Yep.
Lenny, good? All right, at this time, we'll open up to public comment. Please come up to this podium, again, state your name and address. We're gonna have a 3-minute clock going, so please keep your comments as brief as possible. There's really it's not necessary to repeat what somebody else has said, so if we could keep the night moving along. Did that twice. State your name
Michael
and address.
Smith, 65 Hay Street.
Together? Oh, well, you
No,
swear.
I don't, one at a time.
65 Hay Street. Hayes. In Bluffville. The repo room,
Hold on, sir.
I'm
Do you
sorry.
swear to tell the truth? Raise your
Yes.
right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Quick question, the repo room is where you reprocess old plastic to be able to use for other processes, is that correct? You don't actually produce?
Okay, sorry, I failed to mention that the way this works is ask the questions, and then at the end, they will rebut. So I'm just saying.
I was hoping for an answer, but I do know that, but, so, they can answer that question later. I presume that the repo room is where you process things to manufacture in another section of the building. So, while it's commendable you're bringing makeup air to improve the indoor air quality of the space itself, that's good. Other than the filter on the repo room, it doesn't improve the air quality outside the building in any way, shape, or form. It does dilute it. It's possible it'll be a little less noticeable, but the overall amount of pollution, other than what's being filtered out of the repo room, is the same because it's not being filtered at all. So the repo room, you say, is the place that causes all the problems. I would beg to differ because I do smell the additive that you put into the bags occasionally. And so therefore, that smell is presumably not coming from the repo room. There should be no air that's leaving the building at this point that's unfiltered. And after a year and a half of this, of concerted effort by the town and the board, the fact that you propose something that doesn't have filtering on all exhaust air in the building is really kind of a travesty. So again, you'll improve the quality of the air inside the building. Other than that repo room, you're not going to improve the air quality outside of the building. The other thing I want to ask that I'd like you to answer is the new filtering system for the repo room, does that have the same carbon filter bed? I notice it has carbon filters in it, but I don't imagine it has the same level of filtration that the current system has that actually filters the stack air coming out of those spaces, right? This air is just going through a little filter. It's not going through a full carbon bed. So could you explain a little bit more about the filtering system for that area? And again, I would insist that the board not approve this until all of the wall fans or any other air that's exhausted through the wall is filtered at least in some way, shape, or form. And I can tell you, there's definitely processes that are happening in those rooms that are contributing to the smells in the community. Because again, I don't believe they're manufacturing the scented plastic bags in the repo room. And I smell that smell on a regular basis. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Alex Gadd, 8,
Wait, hold on.
It's all right.
sorry, Gadd, 8 Murphy Court, in Blauvelt.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do, thank
Thank
you. 3 quick questions. I understand they won't be answered right away. What are the penalties in place if 6 or 8 weeks from now or in a timely fashion?
Sorry.
Oh, dinging me right out of the
Yeah,
box.
there's 3 minutes.
Okay, first, I'd like to know what the penalties are if this work isn't completed in a
So-
timely
so,
fashion.
Now that I don't know, now that I broke that clock. I'm just gonna set a timer. When it gets to like 2:30, 2:45, I'm just gonna raise my hand. I'm not trying to be rude again.
I
I'm just trying
understand.
to keep the night moving.
I
along.
respect that.
Thank you.
Tell me when to go.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. So first, I'd like to know what the penalties are, or possible penalties are, if this work isn't done in a timely manner. It's a clear observation that Aloof has never done anything in this regard, in this matter, in a quick or timely fashion, or with any interest for the community at stake, only their own, to delay. So I'd like to make sure that there's some penalty in place if this isn't done in a timely fashion, and we don't find ourselves here in September still talking about this mystical work that never got done. Secondly, I'd like to know what the company's policies are to penalize employees who prop open doors when it gets hot. It sounds like they've said don't do it, but I don't understand if there's any operational management over ensuring that that doesn't happen. Third, the plant manager here, if he is in fact under oath, as we all are, just clearly admitted that they're responsible for these odors. He clearly admitted it in his testimony. That's the first time I've heard anyone from Aloof clearly admit it. I'd like to know from the board what that does to change our ability to prosecute them for this action, all this problem, and get them to pay the fines that have been assessed against them. And fourth, quickly, just to reiterate what Mr. Smith said, these scents are clearly coming from something other than what they've described happens in the repo room. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Name and address?
Hi, Dr. Kathleen Kelly, Kelley, Doctor of Nursing, Electrical Engineering as well. 18 Van Buren Street, Pearl River, New York.
And Bureau? Oh, yeah. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help
I
you God?
always do. So I'm here very interested, yet again, with a company that is in violation of our laws, our performance standards, and can cause great damage to the health of our community. As a nurse, I have a lot of stake in the health of my community, but personally, I do as well. For I was stricken with cancer last year due to the environment, an environmental cause. And it shocked me because I'm a healthy person and I've never done anything to increase my risk. But mine came from the environment. So to hear anyone say, sir, and I would like you all to look at me when I say this, please, gentlemen at the table, if you could just turn your heads to the left, I would love it. Because there is no amount.
Excuse me, miss, it doesn't have to be confrontational like that.
I'm not being
Typically,
confrontational.
we ask the applicant to look forward
Okay,
and for you to
well-
address the board.
Gentlemen usually do, but there is no amount of emissions that are safe if they concern or contain carcinogens. No amount. You can dilute it, you can filter it, but if it comes out in the air and you can smell it, it is going to cause cancer. And I am living proof of that. And I want you to remember that when you go to bed tonight. I would also like to ask when the air testing that is done, that it be done during the times of startup and shutdown procedures, because that is when most emissions exceed normal standards. I would like to remind you that the performance standards that are in place that you are currently in violation of, 4.164, prohibit any fly, ash, dust, fumes, vapors, and gases or other air pollution, because there can be no emissions that can cause damage to the health of people, animals, or vegetation. 4.182 on odors states that no emission of odorous gases or odorous matter in such quantities can be offensive to the specifications of measurement. And they actually give us a guide of what that offensive measurement is. And it is found in table number 3 in Chapter 5 of the Air Pollution Abatement Manual that has been in place since 1951, and all engineers are aware of it and follow it. So I would like to know if the gentlemen at the table have read Chapter 5, Table 3. Fantastic, because then you'll be able to answer my question. Are your odors considered noxious, as we have heard the word numerous times tonight? Mr. Tony, our gentleman here, admitted there were odors within the plant, and therefore there is odorous matter in such quantities that are offensive coming out of this company. Yes, sir. So, in summation, it seems that it's very clear to me that this cannot be approved, that this is a problem, and I would hate to have anyone else come stand here in front of you in my position. And thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you.
Suzanne Smith, 65 Hay Street. Yes. Hay Street. I just had,
Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
yes, I
Thank
do. I just had a question about, there was mention of stacks that weren't tested yet. So I just wanted to know if they knew when that was going to happen, and in the event that there's an issue with them, if that would be taken care of.
Thank you.
Hi, Larry Vale, V-A-I-L, 389 Kings Highway. Yep. Tepan. Yep,
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
I only have two things very quickly. First, thank you for the reading of the many expert opinions that you had that the gentleman read off. I would encourage you to also remember that there are other local experts here. The experts that have already testified as to their observations are just as valid as any other experts, and please take their observations seriously. The second thing is really just a clarification on, it's, you know, I'm a little new to this process, so I just want to understand exactly what you're voting on here tonight. In general, what I understand is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the applicant wants you to approve the equipment that will be going in there and the general plan that's going to happen, so they can, you know, make arrangements to install that equipment, and they need a building permit, and you have to recommend to the building department that they are approved and go ahead with it. And then there will be a performance stage where you see if the equipment actually works as planned. And if that's wrong, tell me at some point. But
No, sir, I can.
Yeah.
So, no, you're 100% correct.
Okay.
They can't do anything right now.
Great.
I'll explain the process. They can't do anything until or unless we approve a performance standards for them to start to improve what's going on over there. Once that's done, the performance standards that we're approving tonight, they have to continuously comply with it, which is why, again, they're back in front of us from last year and also from many years ago.
Right. Everything you've said tonight kind of reflects that process,
Great,
and
thank you.
everybody seems to be in agreement. But I'm a little confused by the wording that I saw on the town website, which I believe is what you're voting on. It says, I'm just going to paraphrase a little bit. Aloof Plastics requesting Zoning Board of Appeals review and determination of conformance with Town of Orangetown zoning code, and then it lists a bunch of codes, and performance standards, including but not limited to blah, blah. So it says review, and conformance with these town codes, and then later on it lists the DESO code. Is that conformance with the requirements to install certain things or to operate in a certain way, or is it really conformance with the standards and you're approving that they conform to the standard? The way it's written makes it sound like you're approving that they conform. So if you agree, I think you ought to change the resolution or
So it's
whatever,
not-
but otherwise just make it apparent that there is no agreement to their conformance at this stage.
No, understood, and that's why they're here. It's not conformance to what they're submitting. It's conformance to what's written in the Town of Orangetown Town Code.
But there's
And-
also standards in the code,
Yes.
and those standards involve
It
air
probably
quality.
relate to the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, and I'm sure,
No, the performance standards are our own.
no, I'm saying the town code.
Yes.
Well, there's both. It cites the town code and it cites the DEC standards later in the resolution. But you see what I'm saying? You know, I mean,
Resolution does, but
you're
the
here to
performance
review this plan, approve the plan, but not to agree that they're conforming yet. Nobody's agreeing that any conformance has
They-
happened.
I'm sorry.
Because they haven't done anything yet.
Right.
Correct.
The performance standards includes provisions that relate to continued enforcement, continued compliance, as Chairman Sullivan mentioned to you. So it's, I guess, a dual-step
Yeah,
process.
right.
So in order for an applicant to install machinery, equipment, operations to conform to the performance standards, which are standards, they're words on paper, they have to get an approval for those installations. So that's what
I
they're
understand.
asking for.
Right.
Let me answer your question,
yep.
because they are legal questions.
Right.
Then, the performance standards also has mechanisms for continued enforcement. As Chairman Sullivan pointed out, they have to continually conform to our performance standards, and there's measures that can be taken if they do not.
So it's more of a continuous standard, so even if you.
Yes, it is.
Even if you approved it today, tomorrow it could change and
Yeah, so
you'd
today,
have to conform.
the
Okay.
plan they have in place
Thank you.
today is what we're looking at to approve, so they can improve what's going on. If at the end of the
Understood.
installation, and they're fully aware, at the end of installation, if it doesn't resolve the issues at hand, they know that they'll be coming back to us to
Yeah,
conform.
right, and everybody agrees, and I appreciate the clarification, it's just that the way that the
Yeah.
resolution itself is written doesn't really express it that way. in
This
my
isn't,
opinion.
this isn't etched in stone. This is etched in, as long as they're conforming with the code, they're okay. If they don't, they come back.
Just Mr. Vail, it's also a matter of practicality. The performance standards takes up several pages if you've glanced at it. And we pay, I think, the applicant actually pays per letter to publish these notices in the newspaper. Each character costs a certain amount of money. So the clerks and I chip in, help out when Ms. Arbolino asks, to try to summarize what the application is as simply as possible without literally reciting the code. So does it cite every aspect of a performance standards application? No, it does not. But it tries to at least give notice to the public as to what is applied for, so those who are interested could look into it a little bit deeper, go to the building department, look through the application submissions, or perhaps call and ask questions before the meeting. But that's why the notice was written the way it's written, because otherwise it'll take up several pages.
Chapters.
Okay?
Thank you, Dennis. Next.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Sorry, name and address?
The name is Lori Seaman. Seeman. 179 South Mountain Road in New City.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I
Thank
do.
you.
So I've been following this for, I don't know, quite a long time now. I am the former chairperson of the Sparko Creek Watershed Alliance, and Larry, who just spoke, is our present chair. And I represent a pretty large community of people that care about the health of the creek and the community. And if you have an odoriferous producing company that is being asked to clean the air and their emissions, and at this late stage, they're still not willing to filter all of the air that comes out of the building, I have to ask why. And I appreciate, I don't know your name, Michael? I appreciate that you're on that path. You're asking the right questions. It just concerns me that so many people have put so much time into this and this isn't resolved already. There should be no emissions of anything from the building that's not filtered. I don't think that needs experts. That I love also that Larry called upon saying that the community are really the experts. Anybody who comes in for one day and waves a few air samples is not as much of an expert as the people that live in this community. These people live here, they want to be healthy, and they want their children to be healthy because the children are vulnerable to lower levels. And I appreciate so much that you are still asking questions tonight, but I'm still hearing that you yourselves, as decision makers, have questions that are unclear. And so I feel that the board is not prepared to make the decisions tonight until you yourselves come into the decision-making process fully clear of what it is that they are proposing to do in each room and not proposing to do. I think that's fair. We're counting on this decision to represent what will happen. I don't understand why I heard tonight that the DEC has made recommendations that are being waived off. The DEC makes recommendations because they're advising in the interest of public health and good. I would like to know that all DEC recommendations are being adhered to. I trust that Aloof believes that they make a quality product and invest in research and development. I would like to think that their facility is a quality facility, and I would like to think that they care about community relations and want to have quality relations with the community. That's a quality product. And I'm going to count on the board to assure that the community is going to be heard after all this time, and don't give in to anything that does not assure that all the air will be filtered. That is what will put the community at rest and will build quality relations. And I appreciate you hearing my comments. Thank you.
Allison Sullivan. 2 L's and a Y. 42 Arthur Street, Blauvelt.
Sort of tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
I had a long thing written out, but I'm just going to go straight to the questions. I do want to say this. Aloof has had decades-long and well-documented history of dumping noxious odors into Orangetown. I have copies of Rockland County Health Department dating back to 2016. I have various documents stating in 2010, 2011 from Gregory Price, begging them to do something, requiring them to do something. I just don't know how long this is going to go on before they're really held accountable. And my question is this: why is it they get to continue to operate with years and years of odor issues, not being able to fix the problem? Why wouldn't they just shut down, fix the problem, and reopen? Voluntarily. I don't understand that. And then I have a question for them. What kind of plastic materials were being recycled before the DEC made you stop using recycled material? And did the recycled material have ink on it? And I guess the question is, what happens after the 6 to 8 weeks? And I'm optimistic, I really hope it does work, but what happens if it doesn't? And then there's an additive to their bags called Microban. It's a version of, also known as triclosan. It's an antimicrobial and antibacterial component to which they manufacture in their bags, and it's actually carcinogenic. So I just want to know, how that's regulated. And that's it.
Thank you. Hi, name and address?
Heather Hurley, 202 Hobart Street, Pearl River.
Sort of tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thanks.
Just a couple of comments and questions, and hopefully they can all be answered tonight. Aloof was found not to be in conformance back in November 2016 as it related to odors, and is still emitting noxious odors of burning plastic. As recently reported as last night at 6 o'clock on the rail trail, when the people reporting couldn't even sit on the benches because the odor was so strong. On Tuesday evening, this past Tuesday at 7 o'clock, reports of burning plastic consistent with Aloof odors were reported from the Tappan Zee High School lacrosse game field. I feel it's the responsibility of this board to explain to the public how they could possibly be found to conform with performance standards despite the ongoing complaints, similar to what Larry Vale was saying earlier. And why can't this board just approve a building permit first and then review and make a determination as to whether Aloof conforms with the town code? And this is specifically in relation to Code 4.182 on odors. With Aloof still to appear in Orangetown Justice Court and answer to their odor violations issued last year, how would determining that they conform with town code now, after all the months of court postponements, affect the outcome of their responsibility if this board now says that they conform with town code?
Okay, so again, I think you missed, I don't know if you're listening, but we said that they're not in conformance, which is why they're here,
Right.
right?
But
So, and there's a
if you're to
continuous,
issue-
process for them to be in conformance. When they're not, they come before us and they get issued violations. It is, they cannot move forward. You're talking about odors last night. You're gonna smell odors until they do something. They cannot do anything until we approve something and they get a building permit. That's the way it's written in the code. We didn't create the law. Quite frankly, I agree with you that, and I think we all agree with you, that this whole process needs to be reworked. And I mean, unfortunately, we're working with what we have. And
Okay.
this is the process that's
Just
been.
that it's clear,
It's
because
the
legally.
process that's been laid out.
Right,
that-
but when they go back into court, my fear is that now they're gonna come back and say that, well, they were cleared and now they're approved, that they're in conformance with performance standards. So that's my only fear, and I'm sure it's the fear of some residents
No,
too.
the violations, the
that's-
violations are for certain dates in the past. So the prosecution would have to prove that they were in violation of the performance standards as of those past historical dates.
And something outside of this board. We're not a policing board. We're not, we don't levy fines or anything like that. We just simply, quite frankly, again, this is outside of things that we normally do.
Okay,
So-
so one other question I just wanted to address too is on April 11th, a photo was taken from the rail trail by a Blauvelt resident who lives very close to Aloof. And if Aloof could please explain the presence of a large dumpster filled with tires behind their factory and how it may relate to an online review of their bags from May 2016, which states that their bags smell like burnt rubber. So if they could please address that. And in a 2005 article about a fire at their factory, a Blauvelt fire captain, Kevin O'Connell, stated that there were disposable diapers piled 8 feet high inside the factory. Just wondering, how were those disposable diapers used in their process to manufacture plastic bags, and are they still being used in their process now? And one last question is, if Mr. Lawson could please describe how the current plan of the carbon installation just described by him compares to the carbon filtration system allegedly installed back in 2012. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Ira Steinberg, 10 Murphy Court. Ira Steinberg, Steinberg, 10 Murphy Court. Okay.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So, I live on a cul-de-sac, right, touching Aloof. There's 11 houses on our street with 17 children. We lived there 6 years. Last year, the smells were stronger than ever. And I just have a simple question. It's springtime, and it seems like about 2 weeks ago, the smell started ramping up again. So
Okay.
it's
Again,
springtime.
sir, they haven't done anything since last year,
I
so
understand.
you'll still smell
I
it.
understand. And my simple question is, why do they seem to get stronger springtime? We also got 17 kids on our street. They like to play outside during spring and summer, and the smells seem to ramp up during this time of year. Simple question is, why do they ramp up during this time of year? Simple. So that's my simple question. So, because now the kids want to be outside, they want to play. Our street touches Aloof's property.
Sir, and that's why we're having a meeting on a
Okay.
Thursday night. We typically meet on Wednesdays, first and
Okay.
third Wednesdays. We are trying to speed up the process.
And that's fine. I just want to know, maybe they can answer why it seems to get stronger during the springtime.
Okay.
And that's when most of the kids are out. So, That's all I wanted to say. Hopefully it gets addressed, and, I don't have to go home every, different times of the night, so I see my wife looking at real estate listings, considering potentially to move, because we have to deal with the smells in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is anybody else? There you go.
Amy Pritchett, 111 South Main Street, Pritchett, Chettt, 111 South Main, Pearl River.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask the attorney, I forgot his name, Dennis. Does tonight's decision impact the court proceeding that is coming up? In other words, can Aloof say we are under conformance standards, therefore we would like to postpone?
No. It
One thing
impacts-
has nothing to do with the other?
No, there is a connection. The connection is while this application before the Zoning Board of Appeals is pending in good faith and with diligence by the applicant, there's a stay of enforcement, so we cannot conduct a trial. We cannot issue new violations for performance standards. If this application is approved, that stay is lifted and the prosecution may continue. And like I said earlier, then the people of the state of New York, i.e. the town of Orangetown, would have to prove our case beyond a reasonable doubt that they were in violation of the performance standards as of the date when the violations were issued, not as of tomorrow, or not as of 2 months from now.
Okay, just so I can repeat what I'm understanding. If you approve tonight's appearance from Aloof, the court proceeding can go ahead.
Correct.
There won't be any excuse that, in
Again,
other
that's-
words.
That's outside of,
No.
we can't even
No,
speculate
no,
that. Yeah.
I don't mean that you would decide, but can Aloof say we were approved by?
No, not my legal opinion, no.
Okay.
It's really, that's handled by a different court. We don't,
Thanks.
No, I'm not asking that you have anything to do with it.
I mean, yeah, they
But-
can say, they can say a lot of things. I don't know what legally.
I
they-
believe the attorney is there
Yes,
at these proceedings.
I'm the prosecutor, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Okay, once we close the public portion, that's it. The applicant will rebut to all the questions that we've all taken down. So this is your last chance to speak. Going once, going twice? Okay. thank you. All right, the applicant would like a 5-minute
Wait,
recess.
just before we, do you guys have some, did you,
I had a question for you.
did you want to hear my counsel in a private attorney-client
Yes.
privilege confidential meeting? Okay, we have to put that on the record, so.
All right, so we are going to
So we'll
recess
take,
for 5 to 10
let's
minutes.
say 10 minutes, plus or minus. I think it's gonna be more like plus.
I'd like to call a meeting back to order. Don, would you like to rebut some of these questions that we have?
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Ed Rogenkamp. I'm with Cy Paget Roselle, and I represent Aloof. I would like to respond to some of the comments that were made and some questions that were asked by the board. In particular, I think really one of the key issues that I heard both board members and the public talking about is the issue of dilution of the ambient air in the plant versus filtration. And I'd like to connect this, if I could, to one of the comments that was made by a member of the public about the odor thresholds in the town code. The odor thresholds, which are referenced in the code, which is Table 3 from a air quality textbook, basically are the best science that we have for when people can smell particular constituents. If you've got a given volume of air that has some constituent at the level in the odor thresholds in the town code, that's when you can smell it. If you add the same volume of air with none of that chemical in it, well, the concentration of that chemical drops by half. And if it's right at the odor threshold before you dilute it, it goes below the odor threshold after you dilute it. Our goal with the dilution, and what DEC has said they believe will be successful in doing, and what our licensed PE in the state of New York has said he thinks will be successful in doing, is diluting the ambient air in the facility below the odor thresholds to the point where anything that comes out of the plant can no longer be smelled. We've added filtration to the repro area because in that area, we believe there are potentially higher concentrations of the odor-causing chemicals, so that we need the additional filtration added on to the dilution to bring the exhaust below the thresholds.
So that you mentioned repro room, can you define what operations occur in the repro room and what, I guess what occurs in there?
Sure. I'm going to defer to Tony because he knows a lot better than I do.
Okay, so when we make plastic film, there's a certain amount of scrap, actually an unbelievable amount of scrap. Okay, so we take that scrap, instead of putting it to a landfill, we then reprocess it. So we have film that needs to be chopped up, fed into an extruder. The extruder feeds it out through like a spaghetti strainer and creates these strands coming out of the extruder. And a blade spins very quickly and chops that strand up, so we reform pellets out of the plastic. That goes into a water bath, which then gets dried and then blended, and then those pellets are used again in any number of machines across the factory as, you know, raw material for those machines. Additionally, when we don't have the supply, when we're doing very good and we don't have a lot of scrap coming out of the building, we go to the open market and we buy polyethylene off the open market, okay? And that film is then, same thing. Usually it's in Gaylords. Gaylords are 1,000-pound boxes. We take the Gaylords, we dump them, we separate the film so it gets fed into a chopper, then goes through the extrusion process, through the water cooling bath, and you know, blended and sent to the rest of the process, not the rest of them, but a number of process lines in the building.
And we have you, do you use any recycled materials?
Do I use recycled materials in my house?
No. Aloof.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
Does Aloof use any recycled plastic outside of the factory itself?
Yeah, so at times, we buy this outside polyethylene film.
No. Do you recycle, somebody mentioned tires and diapers.
Oh, no. So diapers, there was a statement made by a fireman a long time ago, okay? We don't recycle diapers. There's no way for us to do any post-consumer recycling of any kind. Food packaging, any of that kind of stuff. We don't do any of that. The stuff that you put out to your curb, it doesn't come into our plant. The film that comes into our plant comes from other factories. It's their scrap, just like our scrap from inside the building. It's same stuff, okay? Just that we buy it from the outside.
Can
The
you comment-
tires
Sorry.
were some illegal dumping done on our property outside of our gate, and so we simply had to go through the expense of a dumpster's worth of tires. And we have video, we just have to catch the person that's doing it and get the Orangetown police to react to that.
Okay, and can you comment on why the smells might be stronger in the spring?
Our processes are continuous. I think I mentioned that once before, that we don't go up and down. We don't necessarily have a season, okay, where we change processes based on the season. So whatever we're doing, springtime, we're doing summer, fall, winter, we're not changing our process.
And now, where's the smells from the additive that you put in? Where's that coming from? That's not the repro room. It must be the other areas?
We haven't really run smells, okay, since basically November.
So what odors would be stronger in the repro room than in the other rooms that would
So
warrant
in the
different type of
repro
filtering?
room, in the repro room, when we make these pellets, okay, we have a center of the process is called the shower head, where we let any volatiles outgas. And we're trying to collect those volatiles and then filter them before they go out into the atmosphere, okay? We found that people were leaving doors open, so now all the doors are spring-loaded, so they can't leave them open, things like that. So that they're what they call fugitive emissions that occur in the room, and this is what our consulting engineer documented for us, all the different places that possibility of fugitive emissions. Leaks in ductwork, which we've since repaired, okay, and those things. The filter housings that you asked about, that's all part of the fugitive emissions issue. So we collect all of those fugitive emissions as best we can. We collect all the emissions as best we can. Some of it gets away from us. Now we're improving collection of the fugitive emissions, so we believe that the room will be much clearer, for lack of a better term, than it is right now.
That's the repro room you showed?
Repro room.
Okay.
yeah.
Are there anything you, in the repro room and in the reprocessing, is there anything you add beside, to it? Any additives, any chemical, anything?
No, we don't add to the repro. It's basically
Just what you have to scrap?
polyethylene, basically. That's what we're putting in there. Right? I'll tell you, because it's in our report, that there are printed films, okay? So part of that outgassing is getting rid of whatever volatiles may be on that printed ink, okay? And then subsequently, the ink sludge is collected and disposed of.
What about the antimicrobial additive that one of the,
Right, so the
people in the
antimicrobial
audience
is a legal product sanctioned by the EPA and everybody else. It's not a food contact product, okay? It's in some products it's food contact, but not in ours. It's in garbage bags. It's what we call a micro ingredient, okay? And it's simply there to protect the garbage bag from any kind of fungus growing on it. People leave it in there.
Fungus.
Or microbes growing on the
but
garbage bag.
is there any waste that you have to dispose of?
Of the
Of
microban? No,
yeah.
that's consumed. That's consumed.
Could you explain that?
So-
Consumed in what sense?
It's in the product, okay? So when we extrude, it's a pellet, it's a small pellet. And we add very little to the process. So a little bit goes a long way. And so it ends up in the bag that gets sold, or the scrap that we create goes back through the reprocessing, and then it would end up back into the machine. So we're not disposing of drums of microband or anything like that.
Are there any
Right,
fumes
I'm sorry.
emitted?
What he's telling me is there's no fumes to the microband. It's contained within a pellet. So that there's no free microband in the room, no liquid microband, no gaseous microband. It's
Or
in a-
as a
it's in a pellet.
result of your process? Are there any emissions associated with the microban at all?
I mean, microband is such a small component, okay, that I'm not sure you could actually measure emissions from the microband itself.
Thank you. And can I just go back to the films with the ink? So you're no longer using those? Is that correct?
We set a standard for how much of the film surface can be printed before we take it. So we reduced that number, right, so that we are below what we were doing before.
And who made that determination?
Us and the DEC in consultation.
DEC consulted with you to
Yeah.
decide that? Thank
And
you.
that one of the permit modifications that we've requested from DEC is to add the conditions that we've placed on the printing on the plastic that can go into the repro, into the permit, so that that's legally enforceable as far as the limits on the amount of printing on the plastic that can be reprocessed.
Thank you.
I wanted to speak a little bit as well to some of the public's concerns about health issues. Both the DEC and the EPA have conducted air testing inside Aloof's plant. And that air testing showed no constituent at any level that exceeded any regulatory threshold related to health. Aloof is also subject to OSHA standards. I mean, Tony and David are working in the plant practically every day. There are hundreds of employees who work in the plant practically every day. You know, there's no health issue.
So that's air within the plant. How about the air being emitted from the plant?
That, well, for what we're talking about with the ventilation and filtration and dilution, that is further diluting the air in the plant.
Right.
The stack emissions are what's governed under the current DEC air permit. There's also no emissions allowed under that permit that exceed any health level.
So testing that's been done now, before today, has shown what?
You're referring to the DEC and EPA testing that I mentioned?
Yes.
They put air canisters in the plant.
No,
They
I'm talking
sampled
about outside the plant.
As far as I know, the DEC also took air samples outside the plant.
And do we have?
Did not find any level exceeding any health threshold. Same, I believe, is true with the testing that was done by Langen when they were hired by the town. As far as I'm aware, the only constituent, the only VOC that was detected by DEC that exceeded any regulatory threshold, and I don't think it was a health threshold, I think it was just a level of concern, was a chemical called perchloroethylene, which is dry cleaning solvent. And it happened that the canister where they were doing that particular testing was near the local dry cleaner. So you would expect to see a little bit of that in the air.
Well, I have to tell you that if it's of concern, I would say that it's of concern. I mean, it's not, it may not exceed a level, but it's a
Yeah.
concern. Thank you.
Perchloroethylene, PERCHLOROETHYLENE. Yeah, I should really have somebody else do that.
The Google.
Yeah, yeah. That was well outside the building, and it's not anything that's related to any Aloof process. I would also like to address some of the comments that were made about the alleged delay in Aloof taking measures to address these issues. We've been working on this for close to a year, and we've been acting in conjunction with the DEC. And as I think you can see on the list of the 21 action items that we gave you, we've already taken numerous steps in consultation with the DEC to try and address these issues. Believe me, we wish that this was not taking as long as it has. Just to give you a couple of examples, we were hoping to do the stack testing in April. We were trying to schedule that for April. We sent DEC our proposed protocol to do the stack testing on the deadline they set, March 3rd. We did not get DEC's approval on that protocol until last week. We couldn't do the testing until they told us they were okay with what we were doing. Similarly, we sent these proposed upgrades for the ventilation in the plant and the filtration on the exhaust to DEC in February. They approved it. They said we needed town approval. We put in the application. We're hoping to get approval to get these in as soon as possible. These things do take time. I wish we could do it faster. There were a couple of other specific comments. One of those also relates to the stack testing about testing at startup and shutdown, where emissions are supposed to be greater. That's the startup and shutdown emissions are actually a concern at power plants because the type of emissions controls that are typically used, for example, at a coal-fired power plant, have to be at a certain temperature to work properly. So as the power plant is coming up to temperature, the emissions controls aren't working as well as they might when it's up to temperature, so you get more emissions at startup. Same thing when you're shutting it down. As the temperature comes down, the emission controls stop working as well. You get more emissions at shutdown. That's not the case with the Aloof's process. The filtration measures are cyclones and physical filters, HEPA filters, and carbon filters. None of that is temperature dependent. So the protocol that we have with DEC recognizes that the process is going to come up to temperature. We're going to do the testing at the same emissions level that's going to happen whenever the process is running, and those are the emissions we get.
Could you just when is it that you are gonna do the stack testing now? The one that you were supposed to do in March?
You gotta turn that on, yeah.
What is,
No, you gotta
when is
turn
it,
it
that would help, wouldn't
There you
it? When will you be doing the stack testing?
It's going to happen in June. We don't have an exact date yet.
Sometime in June, though. Okay, I thought that's what you had said, I wasn't sure.
You said it would take 6 weeks to install this plan. What is that start date?
I said 6 to 8 weeks,
Okay.
and it's vendor dependent, okay? So as soon as we get approval, I can write POs the following day. Yeah, we have the ACA board next week, too.
And what's the lead time for ordering equipment?
I said I can order it the next day.
But I mean,
That
what's the lead time to
includes,
getting it?
that's included in your 6
So-
to 8 weeks?
So the 6 to 8 weeks is acquisition and install.
Oh, okay. So 8 weeks total project after
That's what I believe.
all the town
Yes.
stuff is done, you get a building
Unless
permit.
somebody throws a monkey wrench, like a vendor says, I'm missing this piece from this supplier or whatever, but typically that's what'll happen.
I came in a couple of minutes late, so you might have addressed this. I know there was a question about comparing the filtration system that's going to be installed with the carbon system you had.
Yeah,
Can you
I
possibly
remember
explain
the
that?
question.
Yes.
What the gentleman asked about was the carbon filtration we're going to put on the roof of the repro room. How does that compare to the other carbon filtration systems in the building? It is more closely similar to the IBC carbon filtration, but it'll be about double the volume. Mainly the carbon will be the filter housing. It's a screen. The other ones are about 2 inches wide. This one is going to be 4 inches wide. There'll be 2 rows of them. On the others, it's 2 inches wide, 2 rows in the IBC.
So much larger.
Yeah, it's twice the size.
Twice the size?
Right. And also there'll be 2.
Okay, I'll ask the board to review the performance standards that they submitted, the document. So we've been through it quite extensively. If you do have any questions, please ask them at this time, as well as the fire prevention supplement. Okay.
That was another question someone else brought up. Is the makeup air tempered?
You mean heated? No. It's taking ambient air. We have plenty of heat in the building.
You know, but you're bringing cold air in.
We're
so-
bringing cold air in, right?
Right, in 0 degrees or whatever it is,
Correct.
you're dumping cold air in.
Correct.
Is it shut it down, or is it gonna get shut down, or is it a certain thing, too much cold air, or
No.
how high is the ceiling?
So inside the, ceiling's 30 foot, but if you read inside the report that I did, Max Air has given a demonstration of what happens to the air. It's a low-pressure, high-volume system. So the air comes out of little holes, lots of them, and as they move into the room, they pick up the heat that's collecting up at the ceiling and then bring it down to where the operators are, so the operators become more comfortable in the wintertime. In the summertime, you reverse that process, okay? And you bring in outside air, which is much cooler than the air that's in the building, believe me, during the summer.
Is there any temperature,
Control? No.
set points or controls?
No, there's no control on it.
So if it's 98 degrees outside, you're bringing that
Correct.
98 degree and mixing it
Right.
with the high air of the area. The room
So
might be-
in our building, 98 is very cool compared to what's actually happening at the ceiling of the room. The ceiling of the room may be 120, 140 degrees. So it will be cooler, won't say air conditioned, but it will be cooler. And they're telling us about a 20-degree difference in, at the floor level in the summertime.
I was just looking for attachment A, number 18. Can I ask a question? So, under number 13, is that the number of the old air permit, or is that the new air permit that you've,
We haven't been issued a new one yet, so that's the old air permit.
it's the old air permit
That's the
number?
existing one that we're in compliance with.
So is that going to be, that'll be changed when the new permit comes in?
Yeah, that's what we applied for. We applied for a new permit.
Right,
with
I
the
understand
existing
that.
conditions,
So
right.
that'll be added to this after, how do
I
we do
think
that?
they may change the number. I'm not sure what they'll do.
That's what I'm asking. I don't know. Dennis?
I'm sorry. Say again?
Something changes the performance standards, like a.
They have an air permit number on here, but it's the old air permit number. They've applied for a new one. So how does that get?
Well, like I've been saying, there's a continued enforcement provisions that are in the code, and
Right, so do they just come in and, and I'm looking to you, because I'm not the lawyer.
I didn't make that form. Is it? They have to comply with the New York State
Okay,
DEC's requirements.
just curious,
They're,
it's
you
got
know,
a number here, so since the number's
all
here,
right,
I
how
want to
about
know
this?
what happens.
I would make a finding in any decision you may adopt that the air, you can make it a condition of any approval that you might be inclined to grant, that if you feel it's important, make it a condition of any approval that you would be inclined to grant.
Well,
But
there's
that must-
changes, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, we can give you the new number whenever it occurs.
I mean, I think that's just something that's under the control and jurisdiction of the DEC, and really not something that we need to agonize over the permit number for the
I don't know.
DEC.
We have to read this thing, so yes.
I didn't make that form.
And it talks about an attachment A, do we have one? I don't, right? Do you?
So the performance standards refers to an attachment A.
That's the proposal.
No, it
That's-
says storage
there-
of chemicals, acids, or corrosive agents. It's number, do you have this? It's number 18. Want a copy?
I get it.
I can stick it in here.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's this book. It's that book.
That's why we don't have it.
Yeah, no, you have the copies, but I don't think anybody wants to carry it.
No,
That's attachment A?
that's
that's
attachment A.
attachment A.
Okay,
Right.
okay, okay.
Can you show me what she's looking at?
And so number 19 is attachment A also, is that correct?
I'm sorry, I do have 19.
I'm just, it says NA, so. But it says if answer is yes, identify all such items indicating the quantity of each, which I'm assuming is what's in A. So I'm thinking the answer to 18 should be A, yes, and 19 should be attachment A. Is that correct? So that needs to be changed, because this is what we're reading and using.
Okay. I
Right?
understand. Yep. But either way, you have all the information.
No, I
Yeah.
understand that, but
Yeah.
we approve this, so
Right.
it's got to read the way it's asked. I mean, we always make changes to this when there are errors, so I think we should make the changes.
I'm not sure your process to change it, so maybe
I
Dennis can
think
make
you
that a
make,
condition.
I think you take them down. Am I correct, Debbie? Oh, there you go. Okay. I have nothing. I got to the end of it.
Good.
Mike? Lenny? All right, if there's no further question from the board, I make a motion to close.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. You gonna read the secret, or did you do that already?
Secret.
Can you do that, Lex?
No, we did not. Ready, Anne Marie? It is the legal counsel of the Office of the Town Attorney with regard to Aloof Plastics application ZBA number 17-31, which application requests that the ZBA find that the proposal will result in conformance to the performance standards of the Orangetown zoning code, that since this application entails the ZBA engaging in a review to determine compliance with technical requirements which were enacted to protect the environment, amongst other things, this application is exempt from environmental review as a Type 2 action under the State Environmental Quality Review Act pursuant to SECRA Regulations, Section 617.5, Paragraph C, Subparagraph 28, which determination of Type 2 status is only applicable to the ZBA's review of performance standards and not to the review of any other municipal board or agency. If none of you have any questions, any ZBA member may adopt my legal opinion as a motion if you wish.
I so move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the application for Aloof's performance standards. We've conferred with our attorney. He's actually gonna read our decision.
Which you discussed with me and you recited to me and asked me to take down your recitation.
Thank you.
In view of the report to the Zoning Board of Appeals, hereinafter the ZBA dated May 3, 2017, by Joseph J. Moran, P.E., Commissioner of the Orangetown Department of Environmental Management and Engineering. Any one of you of the ZBA may make a motion, if you wish, that the application of Aloof Plastics, ZBA number 17-31, for performance standards conformance pursuant to Orangetown Zoning Code Section 4.1 is approved with the following specific conditions. Excuse me. 1, the said report dated May 3, 2017 by Joseph J. Moran, P.E., and the report to the ZBA dated May 1, 2017 by Michael B. Bettman, Chief Fire Inspector of the town's Bureau of Fire Prevention, shall be complied with by the applicant. 2, pursuant to Orangetown Zoning Code Section 4.13, Section 10.334, Paragraph C, and Section 10.335, initial and continued compliance with the performance standard shall be required, and any building permit or certificate of occupancy issued shall be conditioned on, among other things, the applicant's completed installations in operation conforming to the performance standards, and the applicant's paying of the fees to the town for services of the town's own expert consultant or consultants deemed reasonable and necessary by the Orangetown Department of Environmental Management and Engineering, hereinafter DEME, the Orangetown Office of Building, Zoning, and Planning Administration and Enforcement, hereinafter OBZPAE or OBSBA, and/or the ZBA for advice as to whether or not the applicant's completed installations will, in operation, conform or are conforming to the performance standards, and as prescribed in the following conditions, number 3 and number 4. Number 3, the applicant's initial and continued compliance with the performance standards shall include the following. A, all installations shall be completed within 8 weeks of issuance of a building permit, which shall be applied for by the applicant with utmost diligence and without delay. B, inspections and/or testing on-site while installations are in operation by OBSBA, DEME, and/or the town-retained expert consultants to the extent, type, and/or degree that OBSBA, DEME, and/or the town's expert consultants deem necessary. And, C, item number 15 of the town's use subject to performance standards form shall be updated as to the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation's air permit number. And D, applicant shall comply with item number 6 of the applicant's summary of implementation of additional air emissions controls and remedial actions at Eloof Plastics, which addresses stacked air testing pursuant to the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. And 4, DEME and/or OBSBA shall investigate any alleged violation of performance standards by the applicant, and if there are reasonable grounds to believe that a violation exists, DEME and/or OBSBA shall notify the ZBA of the occurrence or existence of a probable violation thereof, and the ZBA shall investigate the alleged violation, and for such investigation may employ qualified expert consultants. And if, after holding a public hearing on due notice, including notice to the applicant, except for posting of signs at the subject site, which signs shall not be required, the fees for which public hearing shall be paid for by the applicant, the ZBA finds that a violation occurred or exists, the ZBA may revoke and rescind this approval decision, and any building permit and/or certificate of occupancy that has been issued based upon this approval decision shall also be deemed revoked and rescinded, which shall be in addition to any other legal remedies that the town may pursue. If none of you on the ZBA have any further changes or questions with regard to my recitation of this proposed motion, as you had reviewed with me, any ZBA member may adopt this recitation as his or her own motion if you wish.
As
Any
previously
discussion
stated,
after?
I so move. Is there a second?
Okay, can we
Any
discuss a minute?
discussion?
Yes.
Mike did.
I think we should have a completion date. I know you have 8
Sorry,
weeks.
so the 8 weeks came from, they have to go to ACABOR.
And that,
for the
so,
building. Yeah. And you have,
Yes, and you
you
should
have dates.
apply for a permit immediately upon approval
Right.
of.
No, that's right.
oh, they've applied already. She said they
So,
applied.
so you have dates for the, where did that go, planning and ACABOR?
Acabor.
Just Hackaborn next Wednesday.
Hackabor's next Thursday.
Thursday.
So a week from tonight.
That's correct.
You could give them a time period.
I said all-
Of 8 weeks after the permit's.
That's what we said.
That's what he said.
All installations shall be completed within 8 weeks of issuance of a building permit, which shall be applied for by the applicant with utmost diligence and without delay.
If the town holds them up, they can't do it.
They already applied for it.
But there's a continuing process with an application for a building permit.
I still think we should put a date.
So-
It's kind of hard to, if the town holds them up, it's not their fault.
So no changes to the motion and second? then?
So a second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, great, 5-0. Make a motion to close?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, thank you, good night.